Welcome to On the Spot, Portland Community College's podcast, brought to you by Internal Communications. This is where you get straight answers to the questions employees most want to know. Every episode, we dive into topics submitted by PCC employees. Whether it's about college operations, our community, or amazing people behind the scenes, we're on the spot for you. And the best part? Each episode is short and to the point. On the Spot is perfect for a quick listen during your busy day. New episodes debut every 2 weeks, so make sure to subscribe. I'm Misty Baus, PCC Public Relations Specialist and your host.
This week's topic of On the Spot is artificial intelligence. There was just too much good conversation to cut anything out, so we made it into 2 parts. Please enjoy part 1, and remember to download part 2 next week.
I'm Misty Baus, PCC Public Relations Specialist and your host. Today's guest is Brandon Gatke, PCC's new Associate Vice President of Information Technology and Security. Brandon, thank you for joining us. We're glad to come out of the winter chill with a hot topic. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and more. We've got so much to cover, so let's dive in.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, welcome. Okay, let's get going here. You're a new leader at PCC, and people want to know about you. So can you tell us a little about your background and what brought you to this role?
Yes, so 20 years ago this term, I was a student at PCC. After finishing my undergraduate at Portland State, I took a few years off and was like, can I even handle higher ed again? And I came back to PCC to see, yes, I actually can handle higher ed, and it started me on my journey to my first master's. I got my first master's from the University of Oregon and my second master's from Pepperdine for generally, think of it as like MBA and IT stuff. And it was a heck of a ride. My father got two two-year degrees from PCC. My wife got all of her physical training certificates from PCC in 2018 after re-careering and reskilling. So yeah, I have a deep connection to this institution. I love what it's done for my family and my community members. So that's what made me really excited to get here.
That's amazing. A little bird told me that you have a background doing your IT security role as well in education.
Correct.
What can you share about that?
So yes, prior to coming to PCC, I was the CIO and CISO, which stands for Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Security Officer for Pacific University. Even though that's in Forest Grove and Hillsborough, it's about 4,000 students, but they had also 12 healthcare clinics. So they're a traditional 4-year school, but also have 50% of their population is professional seeking students, PhD and master's level. So that added an extra layer of complication that was benefited from my background of security and IT, where I did a lot of this in healthcare and nonprofit healthcare. I used to work for an organization as the CIO for Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare, one of the largest regional providers of behavioral healthcare as well, all along with IT. And yes, with the security aspect, it definitely, when you're walking that fine line of academic freedom and information security, that is a pillar of what I like to try and achieve. And it's sometimes difficult.
Okay. Well, now I'm thinking, I would like you to describe for everyone here, including myself, a little more about what is generative AI to those of us who maybe are not working with it, or those of us who have only used ChatGPT.
Excellent. It's a great foundational question. Many people often start, do I even use AI? And I borrow from the CIO over at Clackamas Community College, Sabi Warbach, who said this best. We were on a panel on this exact topic, and he said, how many people in this panel are using AI? And there's a whole bunch of people that didn't raise their hands. He goes, have you ever used Google Maps? Everybody raises their hands. So there is AI, because if you tie your Google Maps to it and it reads your schedule, it's like, hey, I'm going to route you here. Here's the optimal path, and it kind of is knowing where you go. That is a form of AI. Now, generative AI, where this gets very interesting, like the Chat GPTs, is that extra level of reasoning. It is almost conversational. It can almost engage people in a kind of co-discovery questions, which is very unusual for machine learning. Machine learning is just you keep feeding it bulk data and it just keeps iterating. Whereas generative AI, tries to emulate the human brain. In other words, it tries to emulate stacks and stacks and stacks of different ways to hold on to information and then make connections. It's like, imagine going from a 2D checkerboard to a Rubik's Cube, and you can make all these Rubik's Cube in 3Ds, and it can make all these connections. That's the power of generative AI, is the way it can scale and make complex connections.
Oh, okay, that is fascinating. That's a good visual in my head to hold on to what that would mean. How is this tech reshaping the way we work, and what skills do you think will be most valuable in an AI-driven workforce?
Yes, it is shaping the way AI at its current evolution is not a replacement for a human. It still does lack a lot of the creative, spontaneous components. It is a tool to get you 50, sometimes 80% of the way there. So that's how I would define the next generation that's coming up. A, that's already started using it, and B, those that are maybe intimidated a little bit by it is, what do you do? Well, when ChatGPT made itself available 3 years ago, that was transformational for us. That made generative AI publicly accessible. That allows it to engage in this kind of conversational. It's not Alexa or Siri. It's kind of that next level of real interactiveness. And the next group of workforce kind of coming up needs to know how to use this particular technology. I'm going to use a very important example. 30 years ago, the internet came along. It was massively disruptive to everything we do, transformed higher education, transformed just about every industry, because now, instead of going to your local library and thumbing through all these paper products, you could literally have everything at your fingertips if you had digital access. I'll get to that point later in our conversation. Generative AI is the same level of disruption. Because it is here, it is built on the corpus, it is built on just this foundation of knowledge, arguably liberated with or without permission from a good chunk of higher education. They had to train their systems on something. It was often published articles that were nonprofit oriented or in the public domain. There's some squishiness to that. And employees, employers will do themselves a disservice not at least considering what AI can do for their organization. Can it help people maybe do a monotonous task a little bit faster and a little bit different? Now, that's not to say that hands-on work is going to change. The trades still exist. There is still a lot that happens out there. Knowledge workers, yeah, we're in for a very interesting journey. Higher ed is no exception right now. This is truly as transformational as the internet was 30 years ago.
So the kind of work, the monotonous work, can you give us an example?
Sure. There is a great example that, okay, I click this button, it prints out a piece of paper, I walk it over to somebody, or I'm going to scan this piece of paper, I'm going to email it. The workflow, timesheets is kind of a good example. There's other these, you're like, well, how is that monotonous? We're tracking our labor. There's a lot of human individual effort that goes into the completion of that task, making sure the manager has seen it, signed off on it, it's getting sent to payroll. Payroll is actually reconciling it across the correct hours so that people are getting paid the correct amounts from the correct buckets. Well, what does AI do? Workday is an example of this. So we're moving to our Workday ERP. AI can actually sit there and go, oh, okay, well, here are the 5 steps I know we're supposed to do. Let me just automate that for you. Let me just send that email to notify somebody to log in, click the button, and then I'm going to automatically route it to the next person. And then when that approval happens, and so instead of this manual, print something off, go seek a digital handset, AI can help assist make that a lot easier.
Wow.
Now, there's also another thing that AI can do. I've often asked, all right, write me a travel itinerary. And it will write me a travel itinerary if I prompt it saying, I would love to know, I want to go to the best spots in Vancouver, BC that serves pho, and write me a travel itinerary for it. And it's actually done it for me. And that used to be kind of a manual process, contact, maybe search online, search some travel websites, and it's already doing it, or go to a travel agent. Those kind of more manual processes are changing quite a bit. I can provide other examples, but those are the ones top of mind.
No, that's a concrete good one. I hadn't thought of that. It's like my digital travel agency.
Yes.
Okay, now I want to know, how do you see AI having an impact on students and faculty at PCC? And how would you say it fits in with our sustainability plan? Because those of us with green mindsets are concerned. We've heard about energy use with AI. If you'd like to speak to that, I'd love to hear it.
Most definitely. So I'm going to frame a good chunk of my responses because this is a very meaty topic here about what PCC is doing. There is a wonderful group already here for online learning under the Executive Dean of Innovation and Technology, Kelly Schellenberg, and that's being led by the Director of Learning, Technology, and Innovation, Andy Freed. There's actually already an AI engine here at PCC that's student-facing. Now, there's a chatbot that exists for some of these, student help desk, for example. I cannot speak to this. They are the experts in this particular area, but it has a live human sitting behind it. There are changes where a student can approach this asking for help. Faculty members can ask, hey, I need help with XYZ. And this chatbot is smart enough, it's an AI-controlled chatbot, to look under the hood of where's the how-to article that informs this? Where's the other information that exists at PCC digitally that I can compile and give an answer back? Oh, you don't like the answer? That's okay. You can talk to a real human. There's a real human sitting behind that during its hours of operation. So I'm going to form my next few responses very importantly. I am a huge proponent of academic freedom and the technology to empower that. Centralized IT at PCC, it helps enable learning, but we don't get to dictate how it happens. There's security questions. So I get to cheat here a little bit and say there's other really smart people having that conversation about how it impacts students and the delivery of instruction directly. However, we are doing quite a bit here that at IT, we want to make sure, how can we be a partner? How can we be an enabler? Or how can we get out of the way to make this happen? Now, foundational and governing all of this is kind of our security and compliance that has to go into it. We have something called FERPA, which is your education records. We still have HIPAA, which is your health information. And we have a humongous amount of PPI, private and protected information. And I could cite another half dozen regulations and acronyms that would just make our heads spin, what's the point? And those are the agreements we have that we keep this information private and secure, yet still accessible, and those are legal obligations we have in providing instruction. So we in IT kind of help set that boundary, that kind of guideline, so that the rest of these kind of conversations know that they can have some trust in the solutions they're working with and have those really rich dialogue-driven conversations like what the Education Advisory Council is digging into. They've got a potential topic on AI that's kind of running. They want to maybe have a panel. There was an amazing amount of work that they did with the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Cultural Computing. That was a grant that ran from 2022 to 2023. So we've actually done quite a bit. Now,
Wow.
I can talk more about the operational side, but I've said a lot. I want to pause to see if there's any other parts of where we want to go with that question.
Well, that's like a mind blow. I did not know all that was going on around the campus and for that number of years and the grants involved.
Yeah.
It's good to hear that you people are ahead of the curve and already deep in this. What may seem new to some of us, it's been going on for a while now.
And I'll interrupt for just a quick second. I haven't even talked about what we're doing operationally from a business lens, how to make the college run even smoother with AI. So we can definitely save that for later if you wish.
Well, I think we skirted on the energy issue.
Yeah.
Maybe we should pick up on the green thread and then we'll circle back.
Most definitely. So it is correct. So I'm going to cite inaccurately some of these statistics, but right now, every time you query an AI, it's the equivalent of the energy it takes to make 1 cup of coffee. So when I type into Google or ChatGPT or Google Gemini or name the flavor, that's almost as much energy to produce a cup of coffee that it takes. Now, right now, AI, if I'm correct, the energy required that AI is taking is more than 40 or 50% of most nations' energy consumption.
Wow.
So that stat you got to be careful with. So I have to find out where to cite that exactly because that's evolving and there's a lot of ways that you can measure that. But it is correct. So our next, as the future evolves, so AI keeps getting better and better and better, but in doing so, it's consuming more and more and more power. Now, 2 forks have started to happen in the industry to try and address this. One is, well, you've probably heard of Meta, owners of Facebook and Microsoft. They are purchasing nuclear power plants or investing in nuclear energy because there is a year in 10 years from now, AI will require 10 times more power than what it's currently consuming.
Okay.
Let's just think about that number for a second. So they're producing their own clean power grids because solar and wind is not enough to keep up with that. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is what you might have seen with something in the news semi-recently within the last month called DeepSeek, which is a kind of a Chinese startup and a Chinese backed organization. The reason why DeepSeek is so important is it is an optimized AI engine that is supposed to run on older hardware. In other words, energy efficient.
Oh,
That's the catch. So they're trying to find ways to squeak out just a little bit more efficiency in the current level of technology, and not end up on this cascade rise, this incredible rise of energy consumption. The last piece there is, I'll add, actually, I know I said there was 2 things, but there's really a third thing to address the energy consumption. And that's, these models right now are huge. They're, they've got to incorporate all human existence into these things like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. What we're using and what we're seeing is something called small language models. Instead of large language models, which is LLM, you're having small or niche oriented. So in other words, maybe it is a very good generative AI that knows how to do radiology or knows how to do, energy consumption research. I mean, just name the topic, but it's shrinking its corpus, its whole nexus of knowledge to like around one specific area. And the reason why it's doing that is because, well, they're a lot cheaper to run, they require a lot less energy, and you still get a decent quality output out from it. And you don't have to know every answer, you just need to know some answers.
so go from generalist to specialist.
Exactamundo.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
For those of you listening, thanks for tuning in to our 2nd season of On the Spot at PCC. Future bi-weekly episodes bring guests from across the college to talk about the work they're supporting and answer your questions. I'm Misty Baus, and it's been a pleasure. We'll talk again next time.